Welcome to Athlete Talk, the podcast where we make conversations about sports and mental health easy to fit into your everyday routine. My name is Kelsey. I am an intern and a former athlete working for Athlete Talk, and I'm back again with our founder, Dr. Emmett Gill. Welcome back to the podcast, Dr. Gill.
Oh, thank you, Kelsey. I'm excited about episode 2 and just the fact we've gotten this off the ground.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So we are hitting the ground running, and today we talked about discussing the Super Bowl and specifically AJ Brown with Philadelphia Eagles being a huge advocate for mental health in sports right now. So let's just get into that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Kelsey. I mean, I've been a big fan of AJ Brown's for some time, since he was with the Tennessee Titans. I think it was probably around 2021 that he started to have these conversations about mental health and being in a dark place and suicidal ideations. So, it's quite possible that, his work and his great season and the great season the Eagles have had are the culmination of some of the work that he put in on the mental health side.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I remember that discussion kind of happening around 2020, 2021 as well, when he started coming out and really talking about those difficulties. And it's always so, I don't know what the right word is, heartwarming, amazing to see a player, a person bounce back from that and then also have the success, even kind of regardless of the Super Bowl win, just kind of seeing him, I don't know, succeed in his career and be this advocate. It's really remarkable and amazing.
Yeah, and here, like you said, we want to make conversations about mental health and sports really easy. And I think, one of the things that AJ talks about is just talking to a therapist, like how beneficial that can be just to have a place to go where in a private, confidential setting you can download about your job or about your family or about your significant other. There's a lot of value in that. And, we don't therapy isn't a magic trick, right? It's much like sports. You're gonna get out of it what you put into it. And it seems like he's put a lot into his mental health.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking at some of the quotes that were being posted, resurfacing from him, and one of them was really simple, like don't be afraid to seek help. But honestly, it's really interesting. Like when I was sitting with it, it's like it is kind of a scary thing to go to somebody you've never met and share with them your deepest thoughts or even just whatever you're struggling with. It might not be a deep, dark thought, whatever it is, but to meet somebody completely new, new environment, maybe you've literally never talked about your feelings before. Like it's something that's simple and yet not easy. So, like distinguishing those two different things that, like you said, it's not a magic trick. It's very simple when you think about it, but yet it's really hard to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, even in our work with athletes, right? It takes time to build rapport. It takes time to sort of figure out that every little word you say that, your therapist isn't psychoanalyzing you or trying to analyze things, right? It's also hard to come to grips with, sort of going in and talking to a therapist obviously demonstrates a certain amount of courage and self-awareness, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that you're broken or something is wrong with you. It's the talk therapy and it's the skill building piece. But what I also like and like get your thoughts, Kelsey, about is, just in general, like the Eagles, it's like, I think of the Kelsey brother. I can't remember which one it is. Jason that used to play for the Eagles,
Jason, yes.
right? And I look at how wonderful his transition has been out of sports, and I think that says a lot about, his mental health as well, that having different identities and different interests is critical as you transition out of sports. Although he wasn't on the team that won the Super Bowl, he's a former athlete. I look at Jalen Hurts, just sort of the level of maturity
Mm-hmm.
that he has and the calmness that he has. I think when I look at Mr. Hurts and Coach Sirianni, I look at people who've been through adversity and really learn how to handle it and turn it into post-traumatic growth, right? Especially when you talk about Jalen Hurts' journey. So I think there are probably lots of examples of different areas of mental health, that have benefited the Philadelphia Eagles in an environment where it's one of the toughest sports towns to play in.
Yeah. Well, even with Jalen Hurts, and I know some of the other players just talking about how amazing it's been, and yet that it's, I don't want to use the wrong quote, but like not all it's cracked up to be in the sense that they just love the process, or they've been sharing that they just love the process. And so the journey that that must take to get to a point where you love the process more than you're attached to the highs and the lows of what we would think is the pinnacle of playing your sport, when really like internally that pinnacle for them has just been the process of playing and grinding through practices and championships outside of the Super Bowl. It's really cool to see like the dialogue that they're all having just about not really riding the roller coaster completely of you win a Super Bowl and you're all of a sudden worth something. Even like it sounds like they just really have a groundedness about them. And with Jason Kelsey, I don't know if you had a chance to watch his Netflix documentary. I think it's Netflix, where he
Hmm.
was documenting his transition before they even played each other in the Super Bowl. And so I think that just goes to show that he was even thinking about it and trying to shed light on it before he ended up having this successful time playing his brother. I mean, they didn't win, but I mean, still, I mean, so cool that he was even thinking about shedding a light on what that looks like and that process of transitioning out of sport before it happens, before they even had that monumental year of being two brothers playing in a Super Bowl. It's just pretty wild.
Yeah, no, I haven't checked it out, but now I will.
It's
You
really
know,
good.
I've been trying to get accustomed to the Netflix, YouTube TV, Paramount, all of these platforms. You know, grew up in an age where, the television went off at midnight and you played the national anthem. So, um, but yeah, absolutely. And to your point about the process, we talk about the same thing with therapy, right? It doesn't have to always be this negative, it's things that are associated with negativity or trauma. Also, when I'm talking to athletes, it's like there are parts of this that you should be able to look at in a positive light. Whether it's trying something new or whether it's conversations or whether it's exploring your positive emotions on that side of the emotions wheel. But I love what you said, about um, the Eagles and their process, because there are things in therapy that we learn and skills that we acquire, but we don't necessarily achieve the outcomes that we thought we might achieve or that we want to achieve, but we may achieve other things that were unexpected. And so the therapeutic process can also be, it's a tough process, like practice, right? Like games, like strength and conditioning. But it can also be fulfilling, without having some desired outcome, hitting the desired outcome spot on.
That's true. I feel like that's a really good parallel to therapy of like it doesn't have to be a roller coaster either. You don't have to go in because you've had some really rock bottom time. You could go in because you want to take care of your mental health maintenance, or you want to prevent yourself from completely hitting rock bottom when life does throw a challenge or change at you. And so I guess just really validating individuals to know like you don't have to walk into therapy with a distinct problem or be at your lowest point to start. No one's going to judge you for walking in, even not really being sure what you want to talk about just yet, but just having somebody, some third party that is able to talk with you and work with you and build mental health maintenance skills, even like that's part of therapy too. So I think it's really cool to hear you say that as a practitioner for people that might not realize that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, again, when we talk about 90% of the game is mental and 10% of the game is physical. And, we can play around with those percentages, but at the end of the day, what that means is that you should be doing something to invest in your mental health. And I talked to one of the athletes that I've tried to start to work with now. He's like, I don't do that mental health thing. I was like, well, what's your aspirations? I want to play in the NFL. Well, I said, well, you might consider doing the mental health thing because it's just, with team clinicians on every team, with just the sort of attention that mental health is starting to garner and just in this world that we live in, right? I mean, with everything that's going on. I mean, I can only imagine some of these athletes now, especially who are competing in basketball, the frequency with which they travel, or baseball
Mm.
players. when they start spring training with the frequency with which they travel is what is going on, in Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia and internationally with airline flights in the back of their mind. There's so many. The thing I think about college and professional athletics is there's so many things that have to be done outside of the competition that can elicit stress. That it's almost like you said, it's a maintenance thing. It's a skill building piece. It's not always a problem solving endeavor.
Yeah, I feel like it can be framed in a lot of different ways too, to meet people where they are in terms of like approaching it, or even just mental health also doesn't like taking care of your mental health also doesn't necessarily equate to making an excuse for yourself. And I feel like sometimes that is the biggest stigma that I see from people that don't want to talk about it or don't even want to kind of think it's a real thing because they feel like that's just becomes an excuse. And that's really not the case. And I feel like there's actually a lot of help in just having understanding about yourself and having understanding about your environment that really just empowers you to explain why something's happening and then just adapt and cope the same way you would adapt and cope to a situation in a game. Like if something's present, you're like, okay, how do I adapt? How do I shift? How do I pivot to maximize my outcome? You're basically just doing that by learning about yourself, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. It's like what do we hear in sports? We hear, well, at halftime we got to clean some things up, right?
Yeah.
So like in our life, we gotta clean some things up, and we have to make adjustments, right? We've got to adjust to what the other team is doing because we don't change people, people change people. We can only change ourselves. So there are just so many analogies that we talk about in sports that apply to mental health. And again, if we can begin to continue to help athletes and organizations look at things in this way, then we're not making excuses. It's not, it's not that. It's just that the world is in this world of sports and capitalism and all of these things that are going on, there's a lot that's thrown at these individuals. And it's, with social media now and all of these things, which I'm sure we'll get into some other podcasts, it's almost like how can you not do this and really want to be successful at your craft or successful at your craft and successful at life? Because learning how to have a hard conversation with your significant other will be beneficial when you have to have a hard conversation with your coach,
Yeah.
right? And I talk to our athletes about that all the time. They can go have that hard conversation with mom or dad or their wife or their girlfriend or whoever the case may be, boyfriend, whoever the case may be, but they have difficulty having probably a conversation that's less taxing in terms of content with their coach. Well, how is that? Right? So, I totally agree with you in the sense that maintenance, and maybe that's what we call it, like mental health strength and conditioning or mental health nutrition or, something like that. Because I mean, it's just, and I think the other thing is, sometimes we talk about mental health in the context of our system, right? Something with our kid or something with our husband or wife. But, I can attest to the fact that, when I meet with my therapist, I walk out of there feeling a little bit better. And that's about me. And I think that's the other thing, just about individuals, about you feeling better. 'Cause if you feel better, you're going to perform better. If you've got a clear head, you've got a better opportunity to execute the X's and O's that you need to in your given sport. And you're able to execute the X's and O's in life. And I think there's great value in that.
Yeah. That was very well said.
Oh, thank
I
you.
I was like gonna add, but I was like, wow, that's perfectly, yeah, I mean, that's perfectly said. I would agree too, like just feeling better after talking with a therapist, even if you just thought dump, the emotions and the thoughts and everything that makes us human is gonna go somewhere. And so it'll either be outletted in ways that you can control, like talking to a therapist or finding trusted people and really working intentionally on your mental health, or it's going to come out in some other way. And so we might as well direct it towards something very productive and very helpful.
Well said. I mean, again, the analogy we use in sport is control what you can control. right?
Yeah.
And you can control, scheduling that appointment, making that appointment, investing when you get in that appointment. And then the other part that you said is just so true. It's going to come out one way or another, and you're in control, whether that's constructive, productive, or destructive. You're in control of that. And you always hear people say, sometimes when you're going through something, well, I don't know what you're going through because whatever you're going through is impacting that person. It's not directed at wherever it should be. And so, I can say it better. Just I, I think that's a great point. Going engaging in therapy teaches you ways to not only to keep control of yourself because it's sort of like, and you may experience this, in your work with athletes, but had one today, couldn't stop talking about the coach. I said, but what about you? I said, you can't control the coach, but you can control you. Well, the coach makes me feel this way. Well, how do you feel? I don't know. Okay, well, let's start there. Now let's start there.
Mhm.
Let's pick up this wheel of emotions. I see they couldn't they couldn't focus on their own emotions and how these interactions with the coach was impacting them because they were so focused on something they couldn't control. And when we looked at the things that they can control or they can identify, they had trouble doing that. Yeah, I'm just happy that, Hertz and Brown and Sirianni and Kelsey, in all of their different ways, they've shown how, working on your mental health can be beneficial. And, I think that it was great to witness a team that has been so overt in talking about that, beat the brakes off the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, what's
Yeah. Gotta be real towards the end here. I was like, regardless of who you're cheering for in the Super Bowl, but I'm an Eagles fan, so um yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so cool to see. It's really, really awesome. And even just, just seeing all of the conversation about mental health that's happening because of it, it's a double win, to be honest. So
it is. It was. And again, the panel, that the NFLPA put on, it was awesome. So just, yeah. Uh, and hopefully, build off of it when the season starts again. And because I know I think that it's inspiring people. I think that it's inspiring athletes. And that makes it even better what's happening.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, kind of to wrap us up because we could keep talking about it. I hope to see a lot more professional athletes kind of sharing the same thing. I hope it becomes the norm. I hope it does inspire a lot of youth athletes, college athletes, professional athletes all over the world to prioritize their mental health. So, thank you to AJ Brown. Thank you to all of those amazing professional athletes out there that are doing a world of good for mental health in sports. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up, Dr. Gill?
No, man, I'm just excited. I love having these conversations with you. I'm really excited. Hopefully, well, no, we're gonna touch on the NIL and revenue sharing and how that's sort of gonna impact mental health in sports. And if anyone, has any topics that they want us to talk about or, possibly would like to join us to talk about, you can catch up with us. We're athletestalk@gmail.com. Reach out to us or and yeah, no, that's about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Again, let us know what topics you want to hear next and follow us at Where Athletes Talk on Instagram, X, and other social platforms. We'll see you next time.